Welcome to episode 6. Today is with me, and I'm talking about the power of vulnerability and why I believe in it so much. So, me being vulnerable, I've tried to record this 3 times. I usually do it one take every single time, but my cat Flynn has decided he wants to scream at the door, and I got angry, and I've had to record this 3 times. This is the 3rd time. So, that is me being vulnerable with you straight off the bat. And I was pretty angry about 2 minutes ago. I was like screaming at my cat Flynn, like, stop it, shut up. I'm trying to change the world over here, Flynn. You're screaming. And all he wants to do is come in here and hang out with me and be with me. And yeah, but that was something that I had to deal with 5 minutes ago. And I felt very angry. And it's just a cute little cat who just loves me, wants to spend time with me. But oh man, the power of vulnerability. Why do I believe in the power of vulnerability so much? Because it's had such a massive impact on my life. And I truly believe that if you are vulnerable with people, you can develop trust in a relationship. And if somebody is struggling to develop strong relationships around them, they are struggling to, like any relationship, whether or not it's your spouse, whether or not it's making new friends, whether or not it's work relationships, whether or not it's sales. I'm an extremely good salesperson. I'm very, very good at what I do. And I can say it, I'm not being arrogant. I'm very, very good at what I do. I'm a great salesperson. And I've kind of like, why is it that I'm a good salesperson? Because what I do is I weave personal things about me into sales calls to develop trust with people. I will share something that is vulnerable about vulnerable. There's only going to be one take. Vulnerable about myself into conversations with people. And what it does is it makes them feel like it's a safe place to be vulnerable with me. And the quicker that you can do that with somebody in a relationship, the deeper the connection becomes in a very short period of time. And I think that if you struggle to make friends, if you potentially struggle to meet men, women, whatever it is, whether or not it's dating or whatever, and you struggle to get that connection, I think it's because maybe you're not being vulnerable quick enough. Now, when I say this, there's also the other side of it. The other side of it is sometimes you could share too much. And how do you know when you're sharing too much? How do you know when you're sharing too much? I think you know when you're sharing too much when you share whatever it is, you do not feel empowered afterwards. In fact, you feel smaller. It is disempowering. But when you share something that is potentially a massive insecurity, for example, see this here on my head? You can probably see it. You can kind of see it. I have a hairline here, kind of. That's very light right now. I'm actually bald back to the back of my head here. This on top of my head is called scalp micropigmentation. It's basically a tattoo gun, and they do a bunch of dots to make it look like you have follicles, to make it look like I have a hairline. And I've had some people tell me that that they don't believe me because I've never heard of it. Like, that's not real. You should just grow your hair out. I was like, I can't. I'm actually bald back to here. I'm like full bald. I'm like cul-de-sac bald, like really bald, back of my head, bald as bald could be. And it started happening when I was like 21, 22, and it was horrible. It was horrible for me to deal with. I was young. There's all this societal stuff like, oh, he's bald. Oh, look, you're going bald. And it sucked. And I had to deal with that. And even now, sometimes I'm like, am I really saying this? Yes, I'm being vulnerable. It was a massive insecurity of mine, but now I'm like, you know what? I look pretty good bald. Will I get hair again one day? Will I get a hair transplant again one day? Maybe. I don't know. Don't know, but I look pretty decent bald. And the guy that did it, his name is Shannon Liddell. He owns a company called The Ink Barber. Shout out to him, changing people's lives, giving people confidence again. It gave me a massive amount of confidence when I had this done because it makes it look like I just shaved my head. And he said something to me. He's like, man, like, you're one of the only people that I've ever done this for that just openly tells people. And me openly telling people and being vulnerable about what probably was, and not anymore, but probably was my biggest insecurity. I was losing my hair so young. I'm turning 30 this year. I lost my hair very, very young. And it sucked. It was horrible. I wanted hair. I think I looked better with hair. And I probably think I look better with hair now. But that's just something that I cannot control. And he said to me, he's like, man, you're one of the only people that tells people openly. I've told dozens. I've probably told over 100, maybe 200 people. And me being vulnerable has helped other men who are struggling with going bald, losing their hair, losing their confidence. They've gone and seen this guy, and they've got, I think about 6 to 8 people that I know who I've spoke to and openly shared about this have gone and seen him. And every single one of them feels more confident because they now have, it looks like they have a head of hair. They have a hairline. Why am I telling you this story? The power of vulnerability. Because I was vulnerable about something that I was deeply insecure about, and I would just openly tell people, it would actually make me feel more empowered every time I would say it. Going back to my point, how do you know it is the wrong or right time to be vulnerable? I think it is the right time when you share being vulnerable, it makes you feel better and it makes you feel empowered. And it gives less energy to something that you are insecure about. So every time I would share it and people wouldn't be like, oh my God, are you bald? Which is a story that I created in my head, and nobody's ever done that because nobody really gives a shit except for me. That's like most of us. Nobody actually cares about your deep insecurities except you. That's why they're called insecurities, not outsecurities. Anyway, that was a lame joke, but you get my point. Like nobody cared. And every time I shared that story about my hair and what I was going through, and people were like, oh, that's cool, man. I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe this isn't something to be super insecure about. But on the other side of it, there's some things that have happened to me in the past year with doing some really deep inner work on myself, really deep inner work, uncovering stuff from my childhood, uncovering some deep things that influence how I behave, how I show up in my relationship, how I do everything in my life that I have chosen not to share. And the reason why is because I was told by one of my, I'd call him a spiritual mentor. He said, hold the gold. If you uncover something potentially from your childhood, whether or not it's a trauma or something like that that is deeply affecting your life, be very careful with who you share it with, because every time you share something like that, you are losing energy from it. And every time you lose energy from something like this, what can actually happen, because everybody has their own stuff. What is reality? Reality is you see something, you filter it through a lens of every experience you ever had. You also filter it through a lens of every experience your parents have ever had and your grandparents. This is proven with epigenetics, where somebody is default negative, your grandmother, they will pass it down through their DNA and will go into you. It is proven with science. So what is reality? You are filtering everything you're seeing around you through a lens that was created by your entire life. Then you have the genes and predispositions from potentially thousands of years of your ancestors. And then you create a story in your brain, and that is your reality. Now, if you go through some massive transformational experience, whether or not it's you have therapy, whether or not you go through a breakup and you learn about something yourself, or whether or not you're doing some kind of sacred plant medicine and you learn something profound, you're like, oh my God, wow. You gotta be really careful with who you kind of share these experiences. It could be a spiritual experience, whether or not you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Sikh or whatever. You have these experiences, maybe a spiritual experience or something like that. You have to hold the gold. You have to really hold that and really process that and really take the lessons, whatever you learn, and integrate them into your life, and be very careful with who you share that to. There's some things that is it being vulnerable, or am I allowing the amazing transformational thing that has happened to me? Am I losing the power of that because I'm oversharing it? And when you overshare with somebody, for example, say you have this massive discovery within yourself and you share with somebody, going back to that, what is reality? That person you tell will run it through their lens and their filter. And what they can unintentionally do is they can start projecting and start giving you advice based on your experience when it's your experience. It's not anybody else's experience. It's what happened to you. It's what you understood it to be, whatever that thing may be. So when is the wrong time to be vulnerable? When you feel you share and it takes power away from you and you kind of feel disempowered afterwards, or you've lost something. You're like, man, I maybe shouldn't have shared that because they commented on that. And now I'm questioning this profound thing that happened to me or that I felt, or something that is deeply positive. And maybe somebody projected something negative onto it. And now I feel discouraged. People do it with their dreams all the time. Hey, I want to do this. Oh, you can't do that. So many people have tried to do that before, and you're not going to be the one that does it because they project onto you. So you'll be really careful. But if it's something, for example, like with my hair, every time I share it, it gives it less energy and I actually feel more empowered. So real quickly, if it gives you energy and it makes you feel empowered, that is a good way of being vulnerable because it's being true to you. If you are sharing something and you're doing it to maybe justify, or you're doing it to, you're sharing it and it makes you feel disempowered and it makes you feel lesser, then I would be really careful about sharing things like that. But yeah, the power of vulnerability, it is extremely strong, especially you men listening to this, to be vulnerable. We live in a society that almost has a belief, not almost, we live in a society that has a belief that if men share their emotions, anything outside of anger, that they're weak. I think a man who shares his emotions, all emotions, sadness, happiness, grief, vulnerability, everything, all the emotions, he cries, he laughs, joy, despair, everything. You cannot know the heights of joy until you know the depths of despair. Remember that. I want to be happy. I just want to be happy all the time. Well, how can you be happy all the time if you never know what sadness is? You have to have up and down. Can't always be up. What goes up must come down. So kind of talked a lot, kind of get into, when I start getting to this stuff, I get quite passionate about it. But it's not weak to share your emotions. And I think we live in a society that, especially men, I'm talking to men right now, is that you've been told by this toxic masculinity that it's all right to show you're angry, son, but if you cry, you're weak. I think if you cry and you're vulnerable, that takes real courage and real strength. And that's what we need more of in the world, especially men. We need more men who are willing to do that, who are willing to be vulnerable and be like, you know what? I'm not all right now. This is really affecting me. This is going on and this is going, and it makes me feel this way. And I feel anxious all the time. I don't feel safe or comfortable around men, or I don't feel safe or comfortable in this situation. And other guys will be like, man, same. I just never told anybody because I thought that I was the only one. And I don't think you are the only one. But anyway, I could go all day about this. Like I said, I take this with one take. I do it one time because I want to be real. I want to be authentic. I want to be vulnerable. I want you to see the way that I think and me trying to connect my thoughts. And one day I will probably have a concrete plan and a concrete way of doing this. But right now, this is the way I want to do it. This is my podcast. This is the way that I want to record it and the way that I want to express myself. And that's what I'm doing. So hopefully something I said today added value to you. Hopefully you got something out of it. Please reach out to me on social media. Reach out to me on Instagram, Ahren Lynch-potter, AHRENLYNCH Like and subscribe on my YouTube channel. Share my podcast everywhere you possibly can. Because if somebody can get something out of what I'm saying, then the reason I'm doing this is fulfilled. It's exactly why I'm doing this, is if I can impact one woman, one man, anybody and they listen to something and like, that was good, that helped me, then fuck yeah, that's what I want. Anyway, I love you all. Thanks for listening, and we'll chat to you next week.